Okay, does that make sense to people? Does that make sense to you, Serinda?
Yes, I'm just trying to get this Facebook Live going too, but I did hear you, yes.
I see a
Yeah,
note that
because
we
you
are
also-
live streaming now.
Yeah, it's cross-posted to 3 different pages.
Oh,
It's on all of them.
Good.
You have the video available, right? So you know how to get that in once I call for it? Because I'll do the introductions
Yes.
first, and then we'll have the video.
Yes, so it's recording now. And then what I'll do
Serinda.
is, yeah,
He's talking about Tony's video, the YouTube one.
yeah. Oh, I have that. Yes, sorry. I do have that ready. And then when we're ready to go, I'll do a screen share and play that first.
Okay.
Okay.
By the way, do I have the capacity to share my screen? Or may I
Only
have
if
that
I make you co-host, yes.
Okay.
So I can do that if there's something on your screen you need to share. So let me do that.
Yeah, there may be times, in fact, I think I'd like to use the whiteboard function to draw some models on the screen, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay, Tony just joined us.
Yep. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Tony.
Hello, Sam.
Can we introduce you to our guest, Tony?
I think I met him somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
Somewhere I can't remember quite, but
Oh, Tony, it's good to see you, my brother.
good to see you too.
There are very, very few people that have been around like you have, Joseph. You've been everywhere. You have really traveled around.
It's been a good life. Yeah, no, I've been blessed. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How many children do you have?
So we have 2. Yeah, our daughter Faith is currently living in Virginia, studying at a university out there. She's on a pre-med track. And then my son is actually here at Heston College this year, first-year student, and he's in the aviation program here at the college.
Are you at Heston now?
Correct, yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's been interesting, the life with the 2 of them. You know, for those of you who may be parents, they come in as babies and they kind of mess up your life and you don't quite see the world in the same way anymore. But to have them along has been wonderful. Wonderful.
okay. So we've got, who don't we have?
We have Deborah, Tony, Bill, Naeem, and Rabbi Davis.
We don't have Mother Dawn
We
Frankfurt.
don't. She has not joined us yet.
Yeah, she didn't say she was coming either, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, you'd mentioned her in the email, so
Yeah, I've been giving her stuff, but she hasn't responded. So,
okay.
Okay, so I'll take her off here. So Deborah Dix, Naeem, Rabbi Michael Davis, Bill Van, Carl Kirkendall, is he here?
He's not either.
Yeah, he said even today he was coming. So he
Okay.
should show up still.
There's about 5 minutes left, so
Right.
maybe.
So that's the only one. There's just the one more.
Okay. I have both of them connected on Facebook, so I can message them and see if.
Is it, Joseph, is it Chiang Mai, Thailand?
Yeah, it's Chiang Mai, but yeah, Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai.
Chin.
Yeah, it's like CHI, Chi, Ang, and then Mai. So Chiang Mai.
Jing. There's a G on the end. of
Yes.
that. Yeah.
So pronounce it again.
Chiang Mai. So the first two syllables,
Chiang,
yeah,
Chiang.
Chiang Mai.
Chiang Mai.
Mai, yeah.
Mhm.
Ching, Ching,
Tian,
Ching,
Tian, Tian. Um,
like an H in there.
yeah, it's CHI, like a chia pet, right? If you think of a chia pet, and then add an A-N-G to that, and then put it all into
Chiang.
one syllable.
Chiang,
Chiang Mai. Yeah,
Chiang Mai.
There's a restaurant by that name in Wichita.
there is precisely, right?
Yeah.
oh, really?
It's really good.
Oh, really? Huh.
I guess Sam hasn't been there before.
It's very good.
Chiang.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sam,
Okay,
throwing all these
let's
big
let's
words.
just get the music going for 3-4 minutes here, and then we'll start. Okay, Ellen, are you there? Okay, start it up. Well, welcome to another panel dialogue, sponsored by Global Faith in Action and the Beyond Tolerance Movement. The title of today's dialogue is Building a Beloved Community. Tonight's dialogue is a continuation of our dialogue of a few weeks ago. Our theme then was Becoming a Beloved Community. Today's dialogue is entitled Building a Beloved Community. So what does it take to build a beloved community? Well, we hope we'll have that discussed, and that we'll learn some things from. I'm sure that the panelists have done something in their life that they have done, or many things in their lives, to try to build a better, loving community. So let me introduce to you the panelists here. First of all, Sister Deborah Dirks. She's a Muslim, and she's the author, educator, and community developer. And then there's Naeem Baout. He's the president of the Alu Bayt Islamic Center in Wichita. And then there's Rabbi Michael Davis, Rabbi of Congregation Emmanuel. And then there's Dr. William Van, pastor of the ISIS Christian Center. And then there's is Reverend Carl Kirkendall here yet? We're going to say that he's probably going to show up unless something happened at his church. But he's the pastor of Bethany Baptist Church and the president of the Greater Wichita Ministerial League. So welcome him if he shows in, and you can tell him he's already been introduced. And then there is Tony Brown. He's the promoter of peace and artist in residence at Heston College. And we also have another special guest with us tonight, Dr. Joseph Manikem, who was born in Chiang Mai, Thailand. His parents were missionaries there from South India, which was their home. So during his formative years, he experienced swinging back and forth between South India and Thailand. So we'll introduce him in a little bit more. But first of all, Tony's got a gift, a really neat gift that he's giving us today. And it's called Each Other's Light. And he's got a guest singer also singing with him on this video. It's Alia Gonzalez, who will also be singing with Tony. I know you'll enjoy it, but I think it'll even more importantly help each one of us get ourselves thinking about what it can be to build a beloved community.
If I might add, Alia Gonzalez wrote the song. Yeah.
Can you maybe
Oh my.
Yeah, we need to get it backed up, or it won't be. Can you back it up and then start over? Because this is all important stuff, but the music's got to be along with it. Yeah, are you hearing me?
Surinder, are you hearing?
I'm not hearing anything.
No, there's no sound. But Surinder, are you hearing Sam?
No, I'm not hearing. Are you hearing it?
No, no.
No.
Surinder's not hearing
Well,
you.
let's back it up again.
Other's light, then we can be each other's light.
Can you back it up?
And all the war and
Can you back it up?
will disappear.
Yeah, hold on.
Back it up so we see the whole thing, because it's
Raise our hearts and voices
Can
to
you
the
see that?
sky.
no, we don't see it. No, we just hear it.
Okay.
Before we saw it and didn't hear it.
Okay, that's
Now we hear it, don't see it.
that's odd. Let's see. Technical difficulties. Can always count on them. Okay, let's see if we can do this again. All right. Okay. Do you all see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let me go back. And can you see and hear that?
Yeah, this is it. That was it.
Look at the world with me. Is this how it should be? People dying, crying out for peace. Nations prolong history's bitter song, till all our hope and innocence is gone. And how in all the death and pain can freedom flow like falling rain? For love to live tomorrow, we must melt away this sorrow. If we can see each other's light, then we can be each other's light. And all the war and hate will disappear if we can both see eye to eye, raise our hearts and voices to the sky. Then we'll find beauty so clear, love without fear, if we can see each other's light.
Dream with me of how this world could be if our love was without walls and boundaries. Then we would know no enemy or foe, and the seeds of peace could root and start to grow. If we could as one decide to lay down our arms and pride, then our children would not sorrow, there'd be joy for their tomorrow. If we can see each other's light, then we can be each other's light. And all the war and hate will disappear if we can both see eye to eye, raise our hearts and voices to the sky. Then we'll find beauty so clear and love without fear if we can see each other's light.
We fight to protect our land,
But we don't understand
that we must walk hand in hand.
unity we can
Plant a garden of peace, a garden of hope, a garden where everyone will know that there is light in every living thing. So let us see each other's light, so we can be each other's light. Then all the war and hate will disappear when we both see eye to eye, raise our hearts and voices to the sky. We will find beauty so clear, love without fear.
we'll find beauty so clear and
Love
love without fear.
When we see each other's light.
I was just sending an email to Kurt Kendall because he can't get in.
Which one do you
Oops.
think I'm having for dinner tonight?
Hold
Well,
on.
it's not this. Definitely not this rabbit food. Why? Because this
Okay.
What was that?
Now
Well,
the video
anyhow,
started playing in the
Let
background.
me introduce to you Joseph Manicum. 1985, he attended the Heston College, right? And then he just went all over educating all different places. It's quite exciting when I read his bio. In 2012, he and his family moved to his birthplace again in Thailand, and there he ended up as director of the Institute of Religion, Culture, and Peace at the Payap University, and served as a faculty member with the Peace Studies Department. He's got so much to offer to us, so we're really, really pleased that you have chosen to be with us. I know you're a busy person, so thank you. And if you can, it's now up to you to share with us, Joseph.
Thank you, Sam, for that wonderful introduction. And sisters and brothers, it really is my honor to be here with you this evening and to engage with you in some dialogue shortly. Building a beloved community. You know, it was interesting. Earlier this evening, I was sort of texting my kids and I said, you know, tonight we're going to be, Dad's going to participate, you know, connecting with a group of friends to talk about interfaith. And interfaith dialogue is this thing that my kids, when they're small, would make fun of. And I said, yeah, you know, interfaith dialogue tonight, Joe's perspective. And my son had to kind of give me a smile on that one. Namely, you know, and as I think about that, what I'd like to do this evening is reflect on this thing of interfaith dialogue, interfaith connecting, but it's from Joe's perspective. But who is Joe? Some of the things that I would say offhand is Joe is the father of Faith and Matthew. Joe is the husband of Wanda. Joe is a Christian. Joe is the president of Heston College. And I can kind of go on with this list to maybe help you understand who I am. But I think the piece that I want maybe you to hear the loudest is Joe is a person that's on a journey. And it's a journey that's taken on many different shapes and forms along the way. I stand here with you today, not necessarily having answers, but evolving questions. And in certain ways, my faith has driven me there, and it continues to drive me. In my own faith continues to evolve, my Christian faith, as I continue on this journey. I tell our students often, I said, you know, we often talk about peace and peace building at Heston College, but I said, peace is a word that gets defined in so many different ways, right? You ask 100 people for the definition of the word peace, and you'll probably get 200 different definitions. So I often, when I meet with students, I say, you know, but here's a working definition. If you never sat back and thought about it, and it's a definition that I want you to hold on to loosely and look at it. Don't take it in, hold it in front of you, and just observe this definition of peace. And it's this: peace is a journey toward right relationship. And for me, my life has been that journey of trying to work at right relationship with God, right relationship with my neighbors being both my friends and my enemies, and right relationship with myself, right? And there are elements here that I held on to. And in recent times, I've actually added a fourth element to that, which is right relationship with the land, right? And so as I look at my life within these four vectors of relationships, this is where I start to understand, not that I understand it, what it means to be peace, a person of peace, and what it means to work at peace building. So to that end, if I may, I'd like to share a couple models with you and then share some stories, and then maybe we can get into some dialogue back and forth, some conversation here. And I'm going to share my screen here and depict a couple dialogues. First one, just so that we're clear and on the same page, I'd like to talk about the concept of interfaith as opposed to intrafaith, right? And these are two elements for me that have really mattered, because my parents, they came from India, born and raised in India. They were the first missionaries sent by the Church of South India to Thailand back in the 1950s. And really, in my upbringing and in those early formative years of my life, what I realized was, even though, you know, the Christian community, the Christian faith group in Thailand, less than 1%, the vast majority of my relationship was within that Christian community. And really, it was this intra-faith piece, right? And it was this intra-faith thing that took place where I got to work with different groups within the Christian community. And that piece is a very important piece for us to understand, I believe. And that's a piece that I've had to continue to figure out in my journey of peace building. But it's a critical piece because we as Christians have difficulty even understanding one another. We as Christians have a lot of issues that we have to deal with, right? And I saw those dynamics growing up. And as I tried to find my own place as a Christian, it was as a particular type of Christian. Well, I'm not like that Christian, right? I'm better than that Christian. No, I'm better than that Christian also. And so on and so forth, as the story goes. It was a comparative. It wasn't really till much later. I mean, I knew that there were other faith groups out there, you know, and I'd see them on the streets. You know, I mean, who can go a day in Chiang Mai, Thailand, without seeing a Buddhist monk, an abbot on the road, you know, or an imam on the street there? But yet that was not my world. That was not my world growing up. My world was in this intra-faith. It wasn't until later in my life, in my adult years, where as I went on to college and after college, where I started to find relationships in other faith communities. And this is where the interfaith started to take place for me. But what I found interesting was that going back and forth between these two communities was not easy, right? And I think many of us could probably speak to those types of realities that we have faith, maybe within our own faith groups, the interfaith versus the intra-faith. But this model for me, I think, lends to another piece. And again, what I like to do is share with you a model that speaks to what I would call Christian mission. A big part of my upbringing was within Protestant Christianity was evangelism. This idea of going out and converting others into our faith group. And in my own way, this assumption that that for a person of another faith to be good, they had to become a Christian like me, right? And so there's this notion that I talk about that refers to this idea of sameness, right? And for us to be together in a relationship, in a real relationship, we had to be the same. You had to see the world from my perspective to be respected by me. And if you didn't see the world from my Christian perspective, I don't know about you. Yeah, you're okay. And I guess maybe God loves you. I don't know, but I think God's pretty got you damned. I think that's where we're at. But then there's this other notion that comes out of this, right? And it's this idea of manyness, right? And oftentimes this idea of manyness is this notion of tolerance. Can we tolerate one another, right? So we have our communities and we demarcate it with lines, right? And separateness. And we all have our own camp. One has their camp here. Someone else might have their camp there. Someone else might have their camp there. And we kind of say, okay, you stay over in your camp. I'll stay over in my camp. And we'll just make sure that there's this nice wall between us. And that Christian faith for me, that manyness idea allowed me to engage with people of other faith communities. But it meant I had to protect my faith, right? It meant that my faith was something that was so incredibly important that it couldn't be tested. It had to be protected. It had to be sealed off. It had to be isolated unto itself because I had the understanding of God. But as long as we had manyness, we could live in peace with one another. You stay over there in your temple, in your mosque, in your place of worship. I'll stay over here in my church, in my place. We'll keep our distance, but let's not get together. It wasn't until later on in life that the idea of oneness came along. And this idea of oneness is not necessarily the coming together of sameness or manyness, but it's this place that we go to that I would say moves beyond that, beyond this idea of pluralism, right? So manyness could be this idea of pluralism. We get together and we might talk, but we're really not going to bend. Or this idea of exclusion, right? This idea of sameness. I live in this place that excludes everyone else, but it's just me, and you have to be this, otherwise you're not. But this oneness is a place we come to where we bring our faith to the table. And the thing about this was that this took place for me, this idea of understanding God as a Christian came to me actually from Muslim friends of mine. It wasn't the Christian friends, but it was Muslim friends. And it was in their way of coming to me, and in doing so, relating to me and loving me and showing me acts of kindness, forbearance, bringing me into their life, opening up their faith to me as a Christian with no expectation, right? No expectation. I'd like to share a story with you. And it's a story that's I share with you in many ways from a place of vulnerability. It's not a story that I'm necessarily proud of, but it's a story that speaks to the journey that I'm on, a journey that I hope all of us are on in some way. And I'd like to invite you to that journey as well. But this would have been quite a few years ago when I was working for an agency that's doing relief and development work around the world. And by then I'd actually start to work at Interfaith, right? And at Interfaith Peace Building and with this organization in different ways in different communities, mainly in Asia, which is where I got to travel and visit. And, at that point I thought, I'm a pretty good person. I've worked at this interfaith stuff. I'm welcoming of people of different faith groups. I've been to worship with them, to places of worship with them, and I get along and so on and so forth. And I know all of this wonderful stuff, but on this particular day, I was going to Afghanistan, and this was related to work. And it's my first time I had traveled to Afghanistan. And in fact, for me on this trip, there was a pivotal change that took place. And it was this. I remember sitting in Dubai airport, waiting to board the airplane that was a fly from Dubai to Kabul. And I was in the waiting area. It was quite empty, actually. And there's maybe 5 of us there. And they made the announcement, okay, you can board the airplane now. And the 5 of us got on, and I didn't think much of it. I was somewhere in the middle of the plane and just sort of sat down and looked around and said, oh my, it's a pretty empty flight to Kabul. And then pretty soon, a number of people started to board the airplane, and rather quickly, and it came in a throng. But the thing was, I observed the first few people, and there were these men who are kind of wearing these white robes, white turbans with a sash that came down. And I looked at them and said, wow, that looks interesting. I've never really seen someone dressed in that way before. And then soon after that, another one came in, dressed kind of in this white garment, white outfit, with a turban with a sash that came down the front. And soon there was the 10th person that came in, and then the 20th. And before you knew it, this plane was filled with these men who were dressed in white, turbans with a white sash that came down their front. And I started to notice that my palms started to get sweaty. I felt my heart start to beat a little bit faster. I start to sense fear coming in. I said, well, what's going on here? Why am I feeling these feelings? What's happening? And I sat on that flight from Afghanistan to Kabul, and all of a sudden, it hit me. It hit me that a few years ago, there were these men that flew airplanes into these towers in New York City. And since that time in the country where I was living here in the United States, the images I saw on TV of evil, of those who are depicted to be bad people, were these men who were dressed in white robes, wearing these turbans that had sashes coming down. Now, here's the thing, right? In my head, I knew every time I watched that TV screen, I said, you're saying these things, but this does not represent Islam. This does not represent my Muslim friends. Yes, they might be, these individuals maybe, but even then, I don't know them. But yet on this day, on this flight, why was fear in my heart when I saw these men boarding these airplanes? The interesting thing was, over the next 2 weeks, I had the privilege of traveling around Afghanistan. The whole time, I traveled with friends. We went to many different rural parts of the country where there were farmers who had faced drought for many years, and our organization was working with them to recover the land so that they wouldn't be displaced, that they could grow their own crops. And we lived with these families, stay in their homes at night. There was no hotels out there. We were in the middle of nowhere. And every single night we'd walk into someone's home, small houses, very humble, and we'd sit on the floor and they'd literally slaughter the fatted calf for us that night. And we'd sit there and we'd eat these incredible meals at evening and sit down as a team and just have a wonderful time. And when we're done eating, we'd get up and go into the next room and where we would sleep for the night. And after we're done eating, the women and the children of that household and other households would come in and eat what food that we had left, that we had not eaten. And when they're done eating, they left. And then the men would come in. And what food was left after that, they ate. And you know what? These men, they wore white robes, had turbans with the white sashes that came down. My sisters and brothers, I share the story with you this evening, not as a way of I share the story with this evening to talk about the brokenness within me and this journey that I continue to be on yet today. It's not a destination. Peace is not a destination. But what I've come to find out, that peace is an ever transformation that must continue to take place for all of us, on a continual basis, day to day, where we come back and challenge the biases that are grounded in our head from the day that we were born. To look at the other and fully humanize them. On that same trip, I was with a friend of mine. His name was Dirk. And Dirk comes from a European country, and he worked there as well. And he had been in Afghanistan for many, many years. And, and he and I got to know each other in different ways. And one evening I was sitting with him, and then we were just sort of having a chat, drinking some tea. And I said, so Dirk, in your life here, you spend a lot of time with Muslims in their communities. I said, tell me, share with me that experience about how that has impacted you. How do you share your story with them? Can you share your story with them? Do they share their story with you? Or are you able to connect? He said, oh yeah. He said, that's not an issue here. And as I listened to him, my images of Afghanistan from what I heard on TV compared to what I experienced on the ground were two very, very different stories, right? So I said, so, do you ever have questions about your Christian faith here? He said, oh yeah, it happens at times. And do people ask you whether you're Christian or not? And if so, how do you work with that? And he says, well, yeah, people do. They'll ask me if I'm a Christian. I said, so how do you respond to them? And he said, well, I asked them, well, to you, what is a Christian? What is your definition of a Christian? And depending on how they respond to me, I may agree with them, I may not agree with them. And he said, sometimes when I ask them that question, they say, well, a Christian, they hate their wives. They are, oh goodness, what's the word? Cannibals. And they love to sell their daughters into prostitution. They said, that's what a Christian is. He said, well, if that's your definition of Christian, then I'm not a Christian. But he said, so where did you come up with that understanding of what a Christian is? Well, it said, in your faith, actually doesn't in your faith, but I hear Christians who drink the blood of their God. Well, that's cannibal. Said, Christians allow their daughters to run around, with their face not covered and their arms all showing as if they're a prostitute. Is that what you want? And Christians do similar things with their wives. He said, well, if that's your understanding of Christianity, then I'm not a Christian, right? So the question for me as I listened to that, I said, so what are the biases that I have about other faith groups? And how am I going to humanize someone of another faith group if I'm not willing to be curious, if I'm not willing to change, if I'm not willing to be the one to be transformed? So in closing, I'd like to share another model with you. And this model came to me from a dear friend of mine, Mark Tumtai, who taught with me at the Institute of Religion, Culture, and Peace when I was there. And in 2017, Heston College invited me to come here as a president. And something happened that I found very interesting. And it was this. At that point, by then, I was working in an interfaith community, working at peace building, and just having the time of my life. I treasure those days still today. But for me to leave that community, return to the United States to take this new position with Heston College, I had to go and break that news to different people. One of the communities was with a group of Christians who are living on the Thai-Burmese border. And these were Christians who had come together, who were refugees from Burma, some who had lived in this camp for 30 years now, which is another story all unto itself. But these were sisters and brothers that I got to know over the years. And I was sitting with them, I broke the news to them and said, our family is returned to the United States. I'm picking up this new post. And this community, the leaders sat there, the elders sat there, and they were horrified that I was returning to the United States. 2017, they said, the United States is such a dangerous country. you know, the Christians there are not like us. If you go back there, you might get killed, Joe. Why are you going back to the United States? Stay here in the camp with us. You know, if people at Puyallup University are not taking care of you, we'll take care of you. We'll build a house for you. You come and live with us here in the refugee camp, but don't go back to the United States. Stay here with us. I had a similar experience with a Christian co-worker at the Institute. And she was horrified that I was coming back here to the United States. And she said, look here, Joe, come to the village where I live. We have open land out there, and we'll even build your house for you and your family. You come and live with us in the village and we'll take care of you, Joe. Don't go back to the United States. It's a dangerous country. I then went to my interfaith group. And these were leaders within the different faith communities there in Chiang Mai. And I shared the news with them. And they looked at each other. And this is what they said. They said, Joe, we are so sad to see you go. Our hearts will ache for you. But you need to go back, Joe. You need to go back because the missionary work you need to do is among your people, among the Christian community. So go back there. Take us with you. Take our stories back with you. Help them understand who we are, Joe. Work towards peace in your community, Joe, because you can access that community far better than we can. Far better than we can, because you speak the same language as they do, Joe. So go back. Remember us. Don't forget us. Come back to us. Continue to walk with us, but work with that transformation in your community. As I heard that story, as they're sharing that with me, in this life that I have lived, where I was raised in this world that was very much a world of intra-faith, and this world now of interfaith, what I start to realize is that for me to be truly a Christian, a follower of Christ, I'm called to this third place, a different place that requires me to be in a right relationship with all people and to be actively working at that peace in the name of Jesus with all people. Because here's the thing, right? And maybe this does not make sense to some of you because I'm sharing bits and pieces of Christian faith that some of you may not know this, and if you don't, please forgive me. But in the Bible, it tells stories of the instruments that God used to transform followers of God. Sometimes it was a donkey. Sometimes it was a whale. Sometimes it was a Gentile or someone that people of the faith would have considered unclean. And yet God saw them clean, fully loved, fully beloved. So anymore, as a Christian, as a devout Christian, I know I don't know much. I know much less today than I did in those earlier years of my life. I'm much less convinced. I know God is real. I know God is love. I know God loves all people. And I know God loves me. But the relationship, the journey of transformation, this journey of peace continues to be an important part for me as a Christian. And I would argue an important part of what it means for me to be a Christian. So I'm gonna stop there and I don't know how much time we have here, but I would love to engage you in some conversation.
Well, we have about we got about 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe. We went a little over. And so let's take some time here to talk about it. And we've heard it from different perspectives here. Go ahead, any one of you. Start.
This is Naeem. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. First, I want to thank you for your story. It's very enlightening, very informative to hear that perspective. I like your analogy. It's very becoming, actually. It's true. The interfaith and interface. We all struggle with that one, and that's good. You clarified that one. I like your pictorial too. I'm learning something from you, which is good. You went from sameness to manyness to the oneness, which is a great idea. That's what we need to reach to that one. And the one thing that I like the best is to fully humanize the others, which something we lack, is that we look at the others as the others and we forget to humanize them. And we forget that God created everybody and loved everybody. That's his creation, and he loved them all the same, created all the same way. He did create us different, correct. But I created you, as the Quran stated, of nations and tribes, so you get to know one another. So you can find the truth within others and look into each other's to find the truth or to find the way to God, not to use it to separate the creation of God. So I want to thank you for this great introduction, great lessons, and thank you again.
I too want to thank you. I love hearing your stories and your perspective, your responses to your stories. A couple things that you said struck me in particular. Number one, as Naeem mentioned, the going from sameness to manyness to oneness, and especially using that to look at other people. It made me think of this notion of, a dog and a fish are very different. They're very different from each other, but they're both animals. You could say that a flower and a cat are very different, but they're both aspects of nature. If you broaden how you look at things, you can see the oneness of it all. And that's what it looks like your journey is toward, to find, you see who I am and my cohorts, and then you see the differences and maybe respect the differences between them and me, but then to see that we're all part of the one, that's a growth. The other thing, when you said that you were approaching things from a broken perspective or your own brokenness. We were just talking about this in our community when in the story when the children of Israel, when they built the tabernacle and the ark, and they put the tablets of the commandments, the tablets of the covenant inside to carry with them, those were not the first tablets. The first tablets were smashed by Moses because of the calf and all that. Well, what happened to those original tablets? And the Bible doesn't say, but tradition tells us that the broken tablets were taken as well and put into the ark. They were just as holy. And so as they journeyed with the ark, with the commandments, they had to take their broken tablets with them. And the broken tablets were also the focus of their worship. So we take our broken tablets with us on our life journey, and we should treasure them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's powerful.
How is it like for you now? You're back in the United States. Your group, your interfaith group, have released you and have essentially told you that you have work to do.
Yeah.
And I'm just interested to hear how is it for you now here in the United States after being in such a rich interfaith community?
I'll confess it's hard at times. I think it's hard in the sense that in a general way, the population of this country does not fully appreciate the world in which we live in terms of the diversity that exists within God's creation. And part of it was that I was spoiled in Thailand, in that community that I was part of. And the conversations we had moved to depth, right? Because part of an inclusive community must be the willingness to have hard conversations, to understand one another. Because if it's one thing to kind of spend time doing things together, doing is important, but we must move to dialogue as well, where we are able to talk about doctrine, theology, areas that we will, and we do differ on. Because at that point, that's when trust happens. You know, it's similar to what the rabbi just shared right now, right? What does that rabbinic teaching tell me as a Christian about God? How would I know that if I'm not in these dialogues, right? And I think I miss that, right? I do miss that. Coming back to a world that's in many ways very Christian, but yet there's also a sense of peace being here. There's a sense of peace in terms of clarity on what I need to do, the task that I'm called to. So the same way that I would argue my parents were sent to Thailand as missionaries, I have now been sent here as a missionary to talk with my own people, to have the dialogue with my own people. But yeah, no, I'm at peace being here. I think that's clear.
Yeah.
Is there
I'm at
something,
peace.
is there something about the Mennonite community, the Anabaptist community, that allows this to happen for you? Is there something in that tradition that that is conducive to the journey? for
Yeah,
you?
I mean, the Mennonites would be part of the historic Peace Church. And so within that framework, there is a lot of space in how we read the Bible that creates space for us to have these relationships, right? But in a general way, I think this country is very much encapsulated by the concept and the construct of fear. And, oh my goodness. I mean, returning to this country, it has struck me how fearful we are as a nation. And how much importance we put on combating fear. You know, when you walk in a refugee camp and you're amongst the refugees in their camps, fear looks very different. Right? When you walk with the poor, the truly poor, you start to understand the fears that we wrestle with a lot of times in our lives, that I wrestle with, is actually quite meaningless. But to understand God's heart, I believe you have to understand the heart of the poor. When we can get hold, when I get hold of the heart of the poor, I start to see God in a way that just blows my mind. So that's been an important piece for me. And with the Mennonites, there's been a lot of that in our history in terms of that type of work of walking with the poor. But I do think as a church, we are also struggling with that right now, as the church has become more affluent and mainstream. If you look at in our country here today, religious fundamentalism is moving is becoming much clearer, right? And if you look at nations around the world where religious fundamentalism has taken hold, that's where you start to see community breaking down. And so that's for me the struggle as I live in this country right now, to see religious fundamentalism where we peg ourselves on one side of dogma, religious dogma, and fail to see the humanity in people who don't believe like we do, even in the intra-faith circle.
Go ahead, Deborah.
It's been very interesting to listen to your journey. It has some similarity with my own. I started out in the Mennonite community. I was raised on a farm by Mound Ridge, not at all far from Heston. And had the opportunity to get to know very thoroughly through education and through personal contacts, the history of the church and of the Islamic community, etc. I have been very blessed to work forward from that. And I do find that where fundamentalism was when I was a child, what was viewed as fundamentalism back then, and where fundamentalism in the US today, that's very different. And I think it's part of what I feel that, and I look at it as a religious community rather than Christian or Muslim or Jewish. It's a religious community. And as we have to, as a religious community, deal with the fears and everything that comes up from that fundamentalism, I think it's part of what really complicates building a beloved community. I'd like to hear your response to that.
I think at times it comes back to this notion of sameness, right? Where religious fundamentalism speaks to being the same. And oftentimes we confuse faith with religion. And we start to hang a whole bunch of stuff onto religion and then call it our faith. And that's where you start to see that fundamentalism taking place. As the fight against that, I think, is to find ways for us to expose ourselves to different perspectives, right? And so for me, that's part of where being at the college has been important. There's not a lot of places I would have come back for, but the college, because I said, I now have the opportunity to bring maybe, hopefully, a different perspective for these students that are coming here. And many of them have not necessarily thought broadly on these things. But the idea of fundamentalism and sameness, for me, I often find go very much hand in hand. But I think it's hard because our leaders don't lack the curiosity to say, how can we be devout people of faith while also being open to people of other faith communities and humanizing all? I would like to hope that we are taking steps to grow leaders who are able to do that and see that differently for our faith communities.
Thank you. I want to make sure we've got about 5 or maybe a few more minutes on that. So I want to make sure that some of you who have not had a chance yet, maybe to talk, to make sure you do. You don't have to, but if you, I want to make sure you have an opportunity if you want to share something.
I guess you had stated early on in your presentation that biases are born. You don't consider that biases are actually made by circumstances and situations that people go through.
I'm sorry. I must have missaid that. No, I would argue we're actually like a computer hard drive. When we're born, our minds are empty, right? But our worldview gets developed from that day one within that circumstances where we find ourselves and the experiences we have and what we're taught by family members and friends, and that's where then those biases then get developed, I would say. And so even for my own self, that's where being in that Christian religious little community in Thailand that gave me a particular view that over the years then I had to come back and address those biases in different ways. But like that story of flying from Dubai to Kabul, sometimes those biases are so deep we don't even know we have it until we encounter an experience and we're then willing to ask questions. Say, well, should I be having this moment of fear right now? And if so, what's going on, right? And then that's when we're able to bring that bias up and then reevaluate it and change it.
So let me ask this: from all of your travels, because I don't know. I mean, I've certainly been out of the country, but those were on vacation spots, and that's a lot different. So, of your travels where you're actually with people from that particular country, that community, do they see people from the perspective of purely color, as I kind of feel the United States does? Or is that just something that's very unique to the United States?
Yeah. So let me speak. I assume, Pastor, you're speaking about racism and how do we maybe see that? There is clearly racism in pretty much all parts of the world anymore that I've traveled to. How it's expressed is different, right? Here in the United States, oftentimes we understand racism through the African American narrative of the birthing of this nation that we know today, and the role that racism played within that, and that gets in many ways has been embedded in the structures and systems of this nation in this land. If you go to India, you see racism got played out there through acts of colonialism, right? So if you look at colonialism in India, someone with my skin tone from South India would be viewed very different than someone that comes from, let's say, Northern India, whose skin tone may be substantially lighter, right? So I often say if you look at movies that come out of Bollywood and you look at the main actors and characters in it, what is the tone of their skin? Is it like mine or is it much lighter, right? And even in India, we talk about fairer skin, right? And the same way that in the United States, we have tanning beds, there they have whitening cream, right? And my cousins will put on whitening cream out there, literally cream that they rub on their hands every day that then basically bleaches their skin to make it look lighter. So how do you understand racism in that context? It's different. You bring a different analysis to it. You understand it through colonial lens. And not only that, but how is neocolonialism taking place today? Whether it's through media, whether it's through marketing, whether it's through economic systems. So yeah, when I travel, it's very interesting. My wife, Wanda, is white. And when we've traveled around the world together, the experiences that she has of how she is treated versus what I have and how I am treated are very different, right? And so racism is there. It's just expressed in different ways. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I wanted to get a perspective of from outside of a vacation spot
Oh,
as
yeah.
to how people really view. So it sounds like to me that still there must be ingrained
Oh,
in
it
the
is.
world this mindset.
It is. Yeah. I mean, as an example, right? So when I worked for this relief and development organization, I was the secretary for their program in Asia, all the way from Afghanistan to North Korea, right? And so I traveled to all of these countries as the senior administrator. And the history of our organization is that it's all been primarily white-led. And there were times when they had to convince our local partners that I was a head honcho coming in that had the highest authority around the table there. And so I may say something and they'd still look to the white person and say, so is that right? To which they would have to say, he's the boss. Don't look this way. Look that way, right? Where I saw this taking place the most was actually in India, believe it or not. In India is where it happened the most. I mean, it's, yeah.
So then is this, I'm taking up all the time, I apologize. So then,
no.
So then if that's the case, then this whole piece, it has to be something greater than cultural. It cannot be cultural, in my opinion, if it engulfs the world.
Mm-hmm.
You say then it has to be something. I'm not going to get super spiritual and say it's demonic or something like that. I'm not going to say it's not. But anything that is a system that influences the systems of the world has to be, in my opinion, more than just culture. It's got to be something deeper than that that is making that baby move.
Yeah, and it probably depends on how you define culture and how you're using that the term or the concept of culture. I mean, as a Christian, where I've had to come out on this in many ways is as I've read the Bible, I said, salvation is not about me. It's actually about God. It's about Jesus. It's not Joe saving the world, right? It's God's job to save the world. My job is that of faithfulness, right? So why do I work towards dismantling racism? Well, because Jesus demands it of me. And if I claim to be a follower of Jesus, I have to work against racism. I can't read the Bible in any other way. Why do I love people of other faith and see all as humans? Well, because Jesus expects that of me, right? But because I do that, is that going to solve all the problems? No. But the issues we're speaking of are systemic and they're global. But I think as we work at it, for me as a Christian, I've said, as a person of faith, as a Christian, it's impossible for me to read the Bible in any other way except to work at this as part of my faith, which is part of why my interfaith community in Thailand said, Joe, you need to go be a missionary among your people and help them read the Bible, help them understand what's happening with the Bible. Because even in Thailand, the Christians did not want to come to the interfaith table. They didn't. When I first went to that table, they're like, I said, so how come you are all collected, but no Christians are at the table with you? And they all kind of looked at each other and they looked at me and said, sir, are you a Christian? And I said, yeah. I said, would you like to join us? I said, yeah, I'd love to, right? But the thing is, we as Christians see the role of salvation as something for us to do. It's about us to fix the problem. No. as I've read the Bible, I've come to a very different, I read it differently than I would have much earlier in my life. And so you're right, when I look at issues of racism, issues of intolerance, of the lack of justice, however, right? It's out of my faith, I do it. And at the end of the day, I leave it in God's hand. God's going to deal with this. But if I claim to be a follower of God, it means I have to love my neighbor as I love myself. But, yeah. But it's systems. There's larger
We're
systems.
a little over time, but I don't want to cut it off if someone still has something they would like to say. Carl, you want to? Oh, turn your, yeah.
I didn't want the meeting to end without saying thank you for your stories and your comments. And I was late getting on, but it didn't take me long just listening to you. I just didn't hear what you were saying. I could feel what you were saying. And I thank you for your love for mankind, that you're willing to look beyond our differences and embrace them. And as you said, trying to become one. So thank you. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to hear you speak.
Well, I'm glad you came, even though it was late. I know I tried to get somehow this would not send it out anything to you. I don't know whether you got the link from me, but finally we got the link to you. So we're glad you still made it, because you're.
Yeah, I had to use my phone, but it was my computer. I had took it and they had to erase it and put more programs back on. And for some reason I was having trouble logging on, but I'm so glad that I was able to be here to hear the stories you shared with us. And thank you very much.
We're glad you came.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Tony, for sharing that at the beginning, opening there. And I know that this has been a very good time for us to think and ask ourselves where we are in all of this. I've had some wonderful experiences living with people of different religions for a week or two or so, and it really has had a lot of effect on me. But I don't expect other people to have the same effect as I've had, because they haven't had that experience. And so I try to treat everyone in love, and not expect them to be who I am. I really enjoy every one of you here, and I'm so pleased that you're willing to be a part of this panel. I hope you will consider to continue, because you've had an experience, and with this, I'd like to see this continue on, and always have some new people as well giving. But those of you who just keep coming, I think is a really help to our panel. So thank you all for coming, and we'll say good night for now.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, everyone.
Linda.
Thank you.
Yep.